Welcome to the MBA Mission podcast, where every week we discuss different MBA application components and give our expert guidance on everything business school admissions related.
Hey everyone, I'm Harold Simansky of MBA Mission, here today with my colleague Harshad Mali. Hi Harshad.
Hi Harold, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Great. Now Harshad and I were just chatting, and Harshad, your last name is Mali, which I understand is a country, though I just learned it 30 seconds ago when you told me. So from that perspective, Harshad, a good point of introduction.
Yes. Mali is a country in Africa, and Timbuktu, which is a place a lot of people know about, is from the country of Mali. And although I am an Indian guy, as you can probably see, my last name is very unique. And when I go to Africa, a lot of people assume that I am from Mali, and that's something that is very unusual. But yes, good to see you, Harold. How are you doing?
Yeah, nice to see you too. Harshad, you touched on it, but let's just jump right on in here. You are obviously an Indian male. Your background is an engineer. You and I quite frequently have folks who come from, quote, overrepresented demographics, meaning folks like male Indian engineers. Obviously, they are very concerned about that fact. And if I'm a male Indian engineer and I come to see you, Harshad, or some other, quote, overrepresented demographic, what's the first thing you say to people? How should people start thinking about that?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is from my own experiences, people put themselves in squares, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the work they're involved in, whether it's in the field that I work in, or in tech, or really in any part of engineering. And I've done a lot of coding myself. So that work is very structured, and there is very little interaction going on with the team per se. And so, although engineers do have that persona in them, that doesn't come out as well. And so that's the first thing I tell my engineering clients, is to really unload themselves from their work and really bring out who they are.
Yeah.
Because who they are is a lot beyond what they can see at work. And in our annual conference, I had suggested the game theory philosophy, right? Yeah. There are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns.
Yes.
And there are unknown knowns as well. And so what I try to help my clients, or whoever is interested in talking to me, especially engineers, figure out what their known knowns are, and I help them get out their known unknowns. And that's the biggest thing. I think engineers need to come out of their square, and then present themselves holistically. And so that's the first thing that I say. Do not undermine or underestimate yourself, because the things that they do are very crucial for business, really. And if they can bring it out in the way that the audiences, the Adcoms, can understand, they're going to do well.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I think I like to do with my clients. Anyone I meet on the street, sometimes people recognize me, so I, have a chat with them, and that's what I say.
Harshad, what's interesting, and everyone listening should know, at MBA Mission, it is not infrequent that we pass essays back and forth to each other. There's 25 of us here. There's always somebody who knows something that we don't know. And from that perspective, there's a lot of interaction. One thing that's always impressed me about your essays that you help folks with, and I think your rate of success speaks to this, is I will read an essay. Only when I look at their resume do I have any sense that they're actually Indian engineers, Asian consultants, whatever it is, that I've always found with your essays, it truly is people, personality. You make people into a demographic of one when all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the personal angle is something that I really focus on, because a lot of people don't know what people around the world are doing.
Right.
So when it comes to international applicants, I make sure that they bring out their life, their story out in a way that Adcoms here can understand as well. And oftentimes, talk about perception and perspective. So many people, when they write, they think about, okay, the audience is the Adcom in the West, and they are trying to trigger themselves in a way that will appeal to the Adcoms.
Right.
What has changed now is the Adcoms are no longer in the perception mode. They are in the perspective mode. So that's a big difference now.
Right.
The perception that people used to have about others is no longer the case. It is about the perspective. They're trying to understand people's perspectives more.
That's
that's something that I try to bring out. And the thing is, look, I mean, life is full of struggles. I mean, I have gone through many struggles on my own. Business really and capitalism is for the people. Now, whether it works to its best, that's a discussion for another day.
Right.
But I think you have to bring in your life in a way that can communicate your persona, your personality, how you carry yourself, and the link you have to business because of who you are as a person. Because, look, I mean, if you look around, it's the capitalism that has worked. It's not the socialism or communism that has worked, right? So I try to help bring out personal stories in connection with people's, work, their accomplishments, their goals, and clearly why MBA and how, as people, they're going to add to the classroom and are going to do great things in the campus and beyond. I mean, clearly business schools want people who do great things down the road. And, it is people like the ones that, bring a holistic view of themselves in the applications that do well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I've always had this a little bit of a dilemma when I start working with a client. And I think you know exactly what I mean. Frequently, they will look at essays before they start talking to us. They may even download our GSB, HBS essay guide with sort of winning essays. And they'll come to us and say, I want to write an essay like that. In fact, I don't know about you. I sort of have mixed feelings about our guides, our HBS GSB guide, because someone says, oh, what's the menu? What's the formula? And I want to write a great piece of writing. Do such formulas exist? I think I know the answer to it, Harshad, but do such formulas exist? Or if someone says to you, I want to have a great piece of writing, and commercial here, Harshad is a writer. He's a creative writer besides being an MBA mission consultant. But I mean, honestly, I'll throw that open to you. Hey, Harshad, I want to work with you because I want a great piece of writing. What do you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, as an engineer, I've done a lot of coding myself. And when I read something, I can easily put those essays into various buckets, right? And there's a code for that. If I were to, code an essay, I would really look at content, the flow, what the style is, and all of those things. And I can come up with several codes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's very formulaic. So when you read essays from published guides, you tend to, repeat the style, structure, and you try to, tweak in some of those things and put yourself in that. And that's where you lose the organic touch.
Right.
And that's where the creativity comes into play. And it really, in life, someone's really creative if that person comes up with something organic and then, brings out things in a way that he or she wants and in a way that, the audience can understand. So I think you're absolutely right. Reading guides and trying to copy the style, the content, and putting yourself, in those shoes is typically what I see when people come up with essays that don't get anywhere.
Right.
And so I think that's something that people should avoid. I mean, the guides, the essays that they read are just a reference point. It's just for them to understand how to think about themselves,
right,
rather than repeating what people have already said. But what's your, observation? I'd like to know more. I mean, what do you see when you read these essays that look very similar to what our guides say?
Yeah. I mean, listen, one of the dilemmas, and there's a tension here, in the sense of, yes, you want to write a great essay. And the perfect opportunity for that might be the Stanford essay. What matters most to you and why? I also have to remind clients, you're applying to business school, you're not applying to divinity school. So this notion here is you still need to communicate an idea that at least indicates why business school may be right for you. Maybe you're not explicit in terms of, hey, XYZ, I must go to business school. But at least when someone reads that essay, they will think to themselves, oh, okay, it makes sense why this person wants to go to business school. This person has the mind, thinks about these things in such a way that business school will be really a great complement and allow them to do many things. So I think that's how I start thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think the reason why people do that is because they want to succeed. And, many of them rely on what has happened in the past to predict what they think is going to happen in the future. And that's a big, I would say, misconception people have, because Adcoms have read all these things. They can quickly figure out what people have said in the past. And inventions and creations and not repeating things. Look, as you know, I'm a very keen geopolitical general knowledge junkie of sorts. But, like recently I was working with a client who comes from the Defense Forces, right? And we were talking about the Chinese Navy and how the Navy is the biggest Navy in the world. The Chinese Navy is. Right. But a lot of that has been, copied from, other countries' technology. And it's not like that Navy can keep up with the new inventions and all that, right? So I'm not saying that the Chinese Navy is bad. Great. I don't want to get into that debate.
Yes, exactly.
But I think you have to continually up your game to reveal who you are. And so coming back to the essays that we see in our guides, those are great pieces of work, but they are just reference points for our people to understand, how to think about themselves, right? So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Listen, I'm also it's sort of funny. You and I are super nice guys. There aren't nicer guys out there than Harshad and Harold. That said, we both have a tendency of being very straightforward with our clients. And when I see an essay that reminds me of something else, or was clearly a derivative essay, I'll say very honestly to my client, if you are trying to be somebody else, if you want to try to be something that's not you, you lose. Honestly, you lose, because there's always going to be somebody who has a higher GPA than you or has a higher GMAT score than you. So if you try to look like them, you're going to lose. There's a world of McKinsey, Bain, and BCG consultants out there. There's a world of investment bankers out there. If you cannot explain exactly why you are who you are, show that you're unique, show how additive you'll be to this process, that you're not going to, quote, look like anybody else, then you have some more work to do. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, I think your directness is much appreciated. I think as colleagues, I appreciate your directness, which comes with humor also. And that's the best part about you. That I enjoy. And I think I do the same. I try to do the same as well. Look, I mean, I'm a big tennis player. And the fact that Rafa is retiring in November was a big blow. I always supported Roger, but Rafa is one heck of a player and a guy. And, I always tell people, Rafa had 16 years with Uncle Tony to become the player he had.
Right.
You don't have 16 years to become a great MBA applicant. You have only a few months, a few weeks. And this is where the directness helps you a lot. And I like that you're direct. I think for people who understand the meaning behind it and can work on it, can actually excel and do the best that they can. Rather than beating around the bush, right? So, the one thing that I'll say is our directness is not to bring people down. It's to get the best out of them in the least amount of time they have. And as I said, if I were coaching someone, to become a Rafa, I would take my own sweet time, but that's not the case. And I see in your case, when you talk to clients, you definitely have that direct feel, but you put it in a very light way. And actually, I've learned a lot from you in that. Whether you know that or not, I do want you to be aware of that. I think it's a very crucial trait. I don't think essays should be very funny or humorous. There can be a touch of humor in them.
Yeah.
But in real life, I think humor goes a long way to bring down the stress, the expectations people have from each other. And I think both you and I, do a good job on that. So
Yeah, no. Listen, I'm not going to embarrass Harshad because I know you do get embarrassed in this way. I'm not going to tell people what a great tennis player you are going back many, many years. I will simply say, Harshad, you've been a mentor to me. There's no question about it. You've been doing this longer than me. You've been doing it incredibly successfully. I think what you've also showed me, and again, Harshad and I, full disclosure, Harshad and I work together a lot. What you have done a number of times that has really been very illustrative for me is you've passed me clients. You've passed me clients, and you've basically said to me that this client will work better with you than with me. And sometimes the reason for that, and I hopefully have passed you some clients, and sometimes the reason for that is because you and I are different from each other. So when that male Indian engineer sees you and says, oh, that's the perfect person for me, you know that need not be the case. In fact, sometimes what a client needs is somebody who looks quite different from them, who's somebody actually who can poke them and prod them. So you and I obviously will speak to a lot of people who will then turn around and use a consultant maybe in their home country, maybe somebody that a friend used. And the reality is that doesn't necessarily do what you want to do, which is really get the best story, really get the best application. And from my perspective, and I will tell these people all the time, particularly we get a lot of people who are trying many different MBA admission consultants. I say, listen, it's about fit. You have to understand that the person who you're talking to is going to be your intimate colleague, friend for the next many hours, 50 hours. And you have to really fit with that person. And I'd just love some of your thoughts. Wide open question here, Harshad. But
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think fit is very key in life, right? I mean, whether you're buying a home, a car, or even dating, I think it is something that is very important that a lot of people miss out on. You have to figure out who the person is when you're working with someone. And I think a lot goes into, whether you can connect from a communication standpoint. I have had clients who didn't connect with interviewers. They cannot stop that. They cannot change that. But when working with consultants, I think they need to see if the person that they're talking to resonates with them. I think that's something that's really important. So one thing I always tell my would-be clients is to, look around, see who makes sense for them. And especially when I am doing my free consultations, I don't push them to work with me. I think I like to have them figure out who would be a better fit for them if it's not me. And look, I mean, fit is everything. I am big into aerospace and astronomy, not astrology, by the way. I am not a good fortune teller.
No.
But the thing is, the universe is designed, if it is actually designed by simulators, in a very peculiar way. The way the galaxies are, the way they come up and die, the way the planets attract each other and the stars attract planets. These are all, made up with a certain way. I mean, I don't want to go too much into technical details in that, but I think it's easy for people to, really sit down, figure out what makes sense to them or who makes sense to them, right? And then they should work with that person. And so if I feel like I really like a free consult that I'm working with and wants to work with me, but I feel like that person will get even better out of you, let's say, I'm going to send that person to you because the fit is something that's really important. And Look, I mean, I might be biased, but to me, the universe means everything. And
Right.
so when I see what is happening, in the universe, it's the
Yeah.
same thing happening on the earth as well,
Yeah.
but through, real life, right?
Yeah.
And that's the connection I try to draw. But I guess when you look at fit,
Yeah.
for example, right? I mean, what do you look at when evaluating free consults fit with yourself or
Sure.
someone else?
Yeah. Listen, certainly the industries they're interested in is certainly an important piece of it. There's no question about it. We have people, I do, for example, a lot of real estate. Many of us do real estate, but that's something I know. So that's sort of what I would say is a quick, let's think about that. At the same point, what I really look for is just somebody who I can speak to and somebody who will actually be receptive. I think that that's really it. I've worked with all types of people. And like you said, we sometimes pass off clients back and forth or colleagues back and forth. By design, we're a big team for that reason. There is, by all means, we are encouraged to do that and we do it. And if anything, the reason that I would have somebody work with somebody else really has nothing to do with the industry they're looking at, nothing to do with the schools that they're looking at. Rather, from a perspective of personality, they seem to be aligned. Work style, they seem to be aligned. Their needs are very much aligned. And Harshad, you know this. I'm not necessarily the person who you would want to work with if you want to have a Gantt chart of how this process will fall out. And if you're gonna want a series of checklists, Harold is probably not for you. Harold is a guy who likes some sort of informality, who really embraces this notion of the creative process is a little bit messy. So from that perspective, and if someone comes to me who I feel like work style is more a Harshad work style, then I will tell them that's the direction you should go by all means.
And you're absolutely right. I think our backgrounds don't matter much.
Yeah.
I have worked with someone who worked in the White House.
Yes.
The White House.
Yeah.
Worked with someone who was a Broadway theater artist.
Yes.
Okay. I've worked with doctors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I've worked with several,
Yeah.
clients from the financial industry as well. Being rookie that I am,
Yeah.
clearly that comes with me. But I mean, I have clients in pretty much every big school.
Yeah.
The biggest thing was it was not my background
Yeah.
that influenced them to work with me, but it was about the fit.
Yeah.
I mean, to say that I know a lot about Broadway is a joke. I don't.
Right.
But the thing is, I know the values, the characteristics, the traits that come out of that person, and therefore I'm able to position that person well in her applications. So I think that's something a lot of people should also realize.
Yeah.
What you see is what not you will get, and that works in a good way.
Yeah.
Many times in our case.
No, listen. No, I think that's right, Arshad, and I think you'll remember a client of mine, not a client of mine, a consult of mine, who was looking at agribusiness in Africa, and for many different reasons, I thought you were the right fit, which you were. But at no point in this process did I say, "Oh, how much does Harshad know about agribusiness in Africa?" Honestly, it wasn't important, and I think the reason you two were successful is because so many other things were more important: fit, work style, just general personalities. And I think that that's what really will drive the relationship. And again, if you don't have a good relationship with your consultant, then that's when you probably don't get the results you want.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, we both are funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes some people maybe are
Yeah.
too serious, and
Yeah.
maybe the humor doesn't work
Yeah.
with them. And if that's the case, they can work with someone else on our team.
Exactly.
But I think the fit is what is the deal clincher, really. It's not the background.
Yeah.
It's not even the reviews. The reviews are one data point,
Right.
but really the fit matters the most.
Yeah.
Which is why I always encourage people to look at my team and see if there's anyone else you think you'd be better to work with.
Absolutely. And Harsha, just very quickly, maybe a quick profile of folks who you feel like you work with very, very well. And I should say, slight parentheses here, Harshad works with probably the broadest group of applicants that we have. Harshad, there's very few folks who Harshad doesn't work incredibly well with. But that said, Harshad, Give me a general quick snapshot of who likes working with you and you like working.
That's a really good question. I think people who like my direct style like working with me. But the bigger thing is I'm a general knowledge geek, right?
Yeah.
I can talk about pretty much any topic. I might not be an expert in everything. My eye on what's going on around the world, and especially, domestically as well, is very crucial for what people do. Big bookworm of sorts. But, as some people know, I'm also writing a book which will come to fruition at some point. Yes. To me, really everyone is equal. I've worked with people from the financial industry, private equity and banking, whether it's asset management, you name it. And clearly worked with a lot of engineers from various industries, not only the industry that I work in, which is automotive, but also many from the tech industry. I've done so much coding, and I understand the dynamics of play at work and how that transforms your view about work, business, and all those things, and how to bring those things out. So that's one thing. But I also enjoy working with people who have nothing to do with my background, from an education and career standpoint. As I was saying earlier, I worked with so many different people from very unique professional backgrounds. I just remembered a teacher recently that I had worked with, and the person is doing really well right now. But that teacher struggles in the classroom, and why it is important for that person to improve education through business. I've worked with all kinds of people. I think people underestimate us, both you and me, and really, many on our team on what they can offer. And I think they should look beyond what they see in our background, because we've all worked with all kinds of clients, and we've been really well trained. We're excellent writers, all of us. Not only that, the ideas we come up with are just phenomenal. And that's what really keeps me, refreshed every morning. It's the ideas that we all discuss behind the scenes that come into play, and we bring up in our clients' work. So the thing is, yes, we work with all kinds of clients, but so does everyone at MBA Mission. So I think that's what.
And I think that's right. And just another plug, Harshad. And again, I don't want to make this too much of a commercial, but I have referred to you both one of the youngest people I ever spoke with and one of the oldest people I ever spoke with. And again, it's because though the ages were probably separated by a solid 15 years, the reality is that it's the fit, it's the personality. There is no quick checkbox. So this person didn't say to me, I want to work with the youngest person here. That was completely irrelevant. And really, everything is like that. You don't necessarily want to work with Harshad because I would even go farther than that. You don't want to work with Harshad because he's an Indian engineer. You want to work with Harshad because he will get the best work out of you. Together, you will create the most compelling application possible. So I think that's always something for people to keep in mind. And you can start off by figuring this out by signing up for a free 30-minute consultation here at MBA Mission. Talk to either me, Harshad, one of our other 20-something colleagues, and let's just get to know you. And again, this is free. Let's just hear what you have to say. Let us introduce yourselves and help you understand what a successful MBA admission process sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're all excellent writers. That's the foundation of what we are. And when it comes to me, I'm a big general knowledge geek. And as a kid, when I was at NCC, it's called National Cadet Corps. I won a gold medal, actually, because of my general knowledge and my writing. At that point, I had written an essay about the Iraq War and its consequences on India. A lot of people were not aware, even remotely aware of what the consequences would be, because this was just before the internet arrived. So it was not like people could Google and figure things out. So, if people need help to figure out their life from no matter where they are, and I think I can help them. But again, you also got to look at fit. I think I'm a good fit, and I'm happy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Harsha, let's just take a minute and share what your background was or what your background is, because you had an interesting road to come to MBA Mission, MBA Admissions Consulting.
Yeah, I mean, the background is very different from a typical MBA. So, I mean, personally, I come from a low middle class family. And if you look at that today's terms, I pursued my MS at IIT Chicago with a mechanical and aerospace engineering degree. And then I worked in the automotive industry because that was something that had always fascinated me as a kid.
Yeah.
And there I worked on critical systems on diesel engines, but there was a lot of coding involved in there as well. So it was not just designing, but you got to make sure that mechanical design has to work. So there was a lot of coding involved there. And then I did my MBA at Booth, and then I did some product management work in automotive industry, started my own consulting firm to advise manufacturers, small and medium scale manufacturers on their operations issues. And then again, it was a circle because I was always a good writer as a kid. And, it made sense to go back to that, and which is why I joined MBA Mission. And I'm one of the few, I'd say, internationals who work in the space in the US. I mean, there are a lot of other firms in other countries where they're locals, but I am one of the few who is an international in a way who works in foreign firm. Put it that way.
No, of course. But you've been a U.S. citizen now for what is it, about a year, Harshad?
I think it's been 4 years. Yeah.
Has it already been 4 years? Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. I feel like I remember it. God, I guess COVID completely blanked out a period of years at this point. So
yeah, I think the COVID pandemic was a big blip in the lives of many people, and it was during that time that I became.
Absolutely. What I always think is interesting in telling Harshad, and I'm sure you've had this experience, is we all do a lot of ding reviews, meaning people come to us and they say, listen, why didn't I get in? And what I will frequently tell folks is because I've read your story before. And what I generally mean by that is reading your essay, I know nothing about you. This essay could have written by practically, dozens of people. And where I feel like this issue is even more pronounced is for those people who use MBA admissions consultants in other countries. And I don't want to, this is going to sound very self-serving, but at the same point, I think it's right. And I love your thoughts about it. It has reached a point where I can even tell you who some of these MBA admissions consultants are because I've read so many of their essays and they all sound the same. So, Harsh, I don't know if that's your experience as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen that quite a bit. And of late, I have seen the ChatGPT come into play as well.
Right.
I think one thing people need to be aware of is ChatGPT is good on a certain level, but if you, really want to do better, I think you need to think organically. And so schools these days have ways to figure that out. And even if they don't figure it out, on a computer through the various ChatGPT tracking tools, I think just reading things can help them figure it out, help Adcoms figure out what is happening. But I think there's another element to it. Even some genuine essays don't make it. And there are things that are beyond your control. And I always tell people, look, you're running the race with blinders on. You have no idea who's running the race with you. You only know what the outcome is after you finish the race. And that's true, right? So any given season, there are so many applicants. You've got to put your best foot forward. And the essays are part of what you do. But there are so many other things, your resume, very key. You cannot write a soap opera on that, but yet you cannot, forget the accomplishments.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The recommendations are a huge part of the
Yep.
application also.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but recommendations can make or break you in your applications because it's a third lens for the Adcoms.
Yeah.
And, I often tell people who come up with complaints that, I didn't get in, or, what went wrong. And many times the recommendations are just not up to the mark.
Right.
And
Right.
which is also why the clients need to, or applicants need to really focus on who's recommending them, how be in good relationships with those recommenders, especially during the crunch time.
Yeah.
Be respectful of them. And don't write your own recommendations. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And that is, easily tracked by schools.
Yeah.
If you're writing in your applications the same as writing in recommendations, then, it's a clear giveaway. So, I don't think it's just the essays that they need to focus on when they get dinged or they don't achieve the desired outcomes. It's holistic overall.
Yeah, that's right. And listen, what I also tell folks, vast majority of our clients are applying to the most competitive schools. That's something that is easily understood at the start of this process. You want to apply to Harvard Business School, let's say 10% acceptance rate. Even if we do our jobs perfectly and we do the absolute best possible application that we can, we will never get you up to 100%. We just won't. We'll never be able to ever say, this is the winning application. We can't. There's just too much randomness to it. So instead, I turn it around. And anyone who says to me, I want to apply to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, I say, that's fantastic. Let's do it. You want to go there? Let's apply there. I just want people to have their eyes wide open. And honestly, if someone says to me, Harold, I'm only going to go to those business schools, I'm only going to go to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, I don't want to waste my time, then obviously you apply to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. If someone comes to me and says, Harold, I have to be in business school next September, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton is only a start. If you have to be in business school next September, you better include those Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, MIT, Columbia, maybe even go to an Emory at Georgetown, 2 schools that I really love, UCLA. But again, and I've always told people, don't ask me your chances because I'd be a fool if I tried to answer. What else have I done?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think, first of all, people need to figure out why they need an MBA.
Right.
Do they really need it? Right. Some people are just doing that just for the brand. You know? And if that's the case, and if you only want to apply to Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton, then go for it. Right? But oftentimes people are looking for better careers. They want to grow in the field of where they're in, or they want to pivot. And when it comes to that, they need to diversify their school portfolio, just like you diversify your financial portfolio, right? You do not put all your eggs in the same basket because it's going to hurt you. The risk is high. So I often hear, complaints about, I'm not into an M7 school. Should I do this? Not. I mean, you got to look at it holistically. What is the school you got into going to give you from a career standpoint? And if it's going to do what an M7 school is going to do, then go and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And which is also why you should apply to a diverse range of schools when you apply. Just applying to, these M7 schools, and we're all good at this. There's no doubt about that. But coming back to your success rate, I mean, it's not like you're going to be successful. There are things that are out of your hand, things you cannot control. And you've got to think about your career first and foremost, right? And if it's going to happen through in a school that maybe you initially did not want to attend, but it's a good school regardless, go for it. Right? And so that's something that I always tell people: diversify your application portfolio. Do not invest in just bonds or just stocks or ETFs. If you're not an expert, do not go into day trading. Same applies to business school applications.
That's right. And you can't really anticipate what the choice you will have. And I'll frequently tell folks there are certain schools that they simply have a lot of money. Would you go to that school for free? Someone will say to me, well, I only want to go to an M7 school. Really? How about if UCLA gave you 100% scholarship, which for UCLA is not unheard of? How about if Duke gave you a huge scholarship? Really? And candidly, that changes the calculus. It does. It just does. How could it not? So from that perspective.
Yeah, I think you have a point. I think many schools are right there. I mean, recently, just yesterday, I was talking to a client about thinking about applying to UCLA and USC because his goal is real estate. And these are really good schools when it comes to real estate. So he is going to apply to those schools. And, so yeah, having a broad picture in your mind, I think it's very
important. That's right. I remember when I went out a couple of years ago, to Rice, the business school there. And again, Rice, the rankings vary, top 20-ish school. I have to tell you, at Rice, I was blown away. I was blown away by the campus. I was blown away by the professors. I was blown away by the students. And then I was blown away by the fact that it has a lot of money and they give a lot of scholarships. So it is not unusual for me to say, look at the Rice that would be appropriate for you.
So that's an interesting thing about Rice, because one client from Rice who got into McKinsey, that person said, he works with some other people who know you, and when I connected the dots, they all worked with me, but they had gone to different schools. One had gone to HBS, one had gone to Fuqua, one had gone to Tepper of all schools, and one had gone to Rice. And somehow they're connected, and the career outcomes pretty much were the same.
Exactly.
So, you've got to think about that also. Be realistic. Yes, the Harvard, Stanford, Wharton brand is going to be great. But don't undermine other schools. And I often bring the example of tennis. The big four: Federer, Nadal, Andy Murray, and Djokovic. Right? These were called the big four. But Andy Murray only won 3 Grand Slams. And there's another player. I'm a big fan of this guy, Stan Wawrinka, because he has a single-handed backhand like I have, which is why I'm biased. He won 3 Grand Slams, but he was never in the big four. Does it mean he was bad? Absolutely not. So, you got to think about life in some realistic ways.
No, absolutely. And listen, Tepper is a great example. If you want a job in tech, if you want a job at Meta, Amazon, Google, they all have offices in Pittsburgh. You should see, I tell people, pull the employment report for Tepper. Those are amazing companies to work with. Their hit rate is unbelievable as far as people landing those jobs. And I tell folks, how important is the brand if you go to an MBA and your first job is at Amazon or your first job is at Google? In my mind, that in and of itself, your ability to get a job at these great companies, great brands, that in many ways is the key piece of this, because yes, you're at a business school for 2 years, but that first job is really going to set you up in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. The first job is very crucial. And I always tell people to think about the opportunities they can get in the schools that they attend. Do some homework on what you need to do and what the Career Resource Center in that school can do for you. And many times, people end up attending schools that they had not thought about. And recently I had a client who decided to attend Tuck instead of an Amazon school because of the advice I gave her, and why that school would be a better fit for them. So, but you're absolutely right on that.
Right, definitely. Listen, one thing we do during our 30-minute consultation is we talk to people about their candidacy, but we also talk about school selection. And really, there's all sorts of different things that you can bring up with us. It's 30 minutes. It's for you. By all means, sign up. On that note, Harsha, just as we sort of get at the end of time here, any final thoughts for that person who, again, is, quote, from an overrepresented demographic, Indian male engineer like yourself or whoever? What's the first piece of advice you'd like to give them?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, yes, your test scores are important, but that's not the only story, right? There's a lot of talk about GMAT versus GRE also. I don't think they need to worry about that. Take a test in which you will do really well based on what your skills are. And don't worry about the outcomes, because a lot will go into your applications as well. The test component is just one piece. And yes, the bar is higher for male Indian engineers. But if you think the GR is the way to go, because that's your strong suit, go for it, right? So that's one thing I always tell people. The other thing is, again, as I was saying, bring out your persona. I think that's very key. From various angles, your struggles, your trials and tribulations, your successes,
Yes.
the things you do outside of work.
Right.
These things bring out a lot of good aspects that the Adcoms in schools will like. In interviews, don't look mugged up. Be natural, be organic.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people I see are doing even now. And some people will have a cheat sheet on there, especially if they're doing an online interview, and it's pretty easy to catch them. So don't do that, right? I mean, being organic, even if it means you have to stop and think about the response, it's fine. The genuine personal connection is what the interviewer is also looking for, aside from clearly, all your accomplishments, your ability to think, and all that. So that's something that I always tell my, highly represented applicant pool clients. But other than that, I mean, keep doing the good work. See if you can take on things outside your immediate responsibilities, especially if, let's say, you're an engineer doing back-end work. See if you can find opportunities to do front-end work. I think that helps also, right? And it may not show up under your title, but at least you can bring up your interest in the business side of things. And so that's something that I always, push my clients sometimes to do. Other than that, I mean, I think there's so much knowledge on the internet about what to do and what not to do. One thing I also say is do not crowdsource your application. I think that's a pretty bad thing to do, because it's like you're eating steak with ice cream on it. I mean, that's what the application turns out. And I don't think you should go that way. But that's something that I also make sure with all applicants, not just mailing in engineers. Make sure that whatever they say comes out organically.
Right.
Because the misconception that people have is, okay, in the business realm, there's a lot of team-based discussion. Right. So why don't I create something that is team-based and present it to the Adcoms? And that's the biggest blunder, because if you already are providing a team-based response in your application, which consists of your resume, short answers, essays, whatnot, then the Adcom reader already knows this person already knows everything. Why does he need an MBA? That's one thing. The second thing is they are looking for organic content, original content, so that when that person is in the classroom, that person can educate other people around him or her. Right? If you come up with a consolidated, crowdsourced application, that's going to really backfire. And moving on is going to be even more critical, because with the advent of ChatGPT and similar tools, the responses are going to be generic. So you really need to figure out what you need to do to customize yourself. Because your persona, your thoughts, your values, your skills, interests, and experiences are unique to you. You bring something unique in the classroom. Think about that, rather than coming up with a blended approach that ends up in case study discussion, because of diverse opinions for others. But what was your opinion? Someone in the Adcom will wonder, okay, you have so many different things to bring up in the application. But who are you really? And so that's the mistake that I try to avoid when working with my clients.
Absolutely. Listen, if you want to continue this conversation with either me or Harshad or one of my colleagues, by all means, go to our website, sign up for a free 30-minute consultation. Again, it is a consultation. It's a conversation. And if you haven't been to our website before, please go online. We have a huge amount of information, interview guides, insider guides, our blog, some wonderful things there. And finally, we just rolled out, I guess I should say, On Track, which is really terrific. And I encourage people just to go look at everything. A lot of different services that we provide. And of course, the gold star for us is our start to finish package, of which you have the opportunity to work with me, Harshad, one of our colleagues, at great depth, and with generally, I would say we get very good results. So on that note, Harshad, thank you very much for joining with me today, and hopefully you will come back to the MBA Mission podcast again.
Absolutely. It was great talking to you, as usual. So we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the MBA Mission podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so you don't miss an episode. We wish you the best of luck with your MBA applications and look forward to helping you on your journey to business school.